Hey everybody, welcome to another weekly daily. Today is February 26th, Sunday. It's been a fun week. It's been very cold. It was 0 degrees earlier in the week, and then today it's 60 degrees. So, typical Colorado weather. What have I been up to this week? Had a couple shows. Had a couple fun shows. Did a show in Greeley on Thursday at Stella's Pinball Arcade, I believe it's called. That was an interesting show. It was a show in Greeley. Like I said, it's in a pretty cool venue, like this arcade place, but they have kind of a side bar section that has a stage, and you get 30 people or so, and you kind of fill out the space. And the space was filled out. It was interesting though, because the PA system gave out. There were like 3 comics before me, and the PA system was kind of on and off and kind of not working fully, but then it fully died for my set. So I did first set ever on a show where it was completely no mic, no working mic. And to be honest with you, I was kind of going into it like, oh, please work. And it kind of completely died when I got up there. But actually the crowd was very good. The crowd was super receptive to just me. It was a small room, so fortunately you could kind of get away with it. And it was working pretty well. I mean, it was kind of best case scenario for the situation that we were all in. But then with like 3 or 4 minutes left of my set, some hammered dude came in and started heckling. And the set did not end very well. It was one of the worst types of hecklers. It was one of those. It was a guy that was so drunk he would just repeat what you said, and then when you try to engage, they're too drunk to interact. So they'll just yell out something that you say. You try to interact, they're not having it, and then it's kind of weird. So I said something at some point. I think one of the punchlines didn't land, and I was just jokingly saying "Hey, I promise you guys these jokes do a little bit better when the microphone's working." And then I just hear this guy yell out, "You promise?" And I saw him, and you could tell. I could tell. I was like, "Oh gosh, this guy's." I don't know where he came from. I think he'd just come in. I didn't see him kind of sneak in, but he just came in, and I tried to kind of go back and forth with a little bit. I think I tried to ignore it. I tried to address it, then just go back to jokes, and then he just started yelling stuff out again. And then I tried to address it, and he kept kind of going back and forth. And I realized in that moment that without the advantage of having amplification, which is typically what stand-up comedy is, I was like, I'm going to take an L on this. I'm not winning this exchange because I didn't have the advantage of the microphone to kind of outpower him with volume. It was basically just I guess I could yell back and forth with him, and I didn't really want to do that. And it just got kind of awkward at the end. But it was very, very fun show. It was a good crowd. It could have been with kind of the mic issues and things. It could have been much, much worse. But it was actually still pretty fun without the mic. The crowd was super fun. Cool venue. It was really late. I just started working a new job this week, and it was a 9 o'clock show out of town, so it went pretty late. And then, it was just a whole late thing, but fun show. That was on Thursday, the 23rd, I think. And then last night, Saturday, did a show in Byers, Colorado. Small little town, 45 minutes east of Denver, off 70. And that was a very fun show. It was at a place called May Farms. Cool little venue, kind of like a little barn. Not a little barn, but just kind of like a barn setup. They have a bar and kind of an open space where they did the show. It was a good setup. They had, it was pretty much sold out. There's probably 80 people there. Had a stage, spotlight, People were there to see comedy, and they were into it. It was fun. I hosted that show, did 15 minutes up top, and that was a very fun show. First time hosting in a couple months. I used to host quite a bit, running 4 or 5 monthly shows, so getting pretty much once a week almost hosting them. But it's been a little while since I've hosted, now that I'm not running as many monthly shows. I think the last time I hosted was a weekend at the Improv maybe, which was in November. But it was good to get back up there. Felt good, felt comfortable. I'm trying out kind of closing my sets with a new joke, and it seems to be working pretty well. I'm excited about that. Ending it with a story that I have about being in high school and being at a party that got busted by the cops. It's kind of the only story that I have that kind of has, it's just a story. It's got a start, middle, end. Every other story, boy, do they not have a lot of things that are needed in comedy. But working on that. That was fun. That was, that was yesterday. It was cool to get out there and do that. What else is going on? This week I also went off the rails and got pizza a couple times, which that might sound kind of like, oh, Ben, what are you, some health nut? Kind of, I mean, I try to eat healthy. I don't eat pizza a ton. And the reason isn't because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to be Mr. Lean cut healthy man. It's more so I got Lyme disease like 10 years ago, and that's kind of like a chronic thing that sticks with you. And because of that, I have to like be careful with what I eat, sugar, gluten, stuff like that. When I first had it, I had to really be strict for like a couple years. I didn't eat anything, but eventually I got to a point where I was able to cheat a little bit, and now I'm cheating a little bit more. I try not to cheat that much, but got pizza twice this last week, which was more than usual. And I'll tell you what, I went to Pizza Hut as the first place. I haven't been to Pizza Hut since 1997 probably, and it was a sketchy Pizza Hut. I walked in there, and I haven't been to a Pizza Hut in a while, so I walked in. The guy was like, "What would you like?" And I wasn't sure, so I asked if I said, do you guys have a menu? And the guy goes, "No, we took the menu down. The branch is closing soon." And I was like, well, okay. You probably could have waited for the branch to close to take down one of the more important things in the branch, but that's fine. And so then ended up getting a pizza, some wings, and some Cinnabons, and it was $50. It was like so expensive. I almost was like, "Can you print the receipt out so I can see the line items?" I was a little upset about the price there. Was it good? Yeah, it was fine. It wasn't great. And then 2 days ago, gosh, I feel so stupid for this. 2 days ago, I went. So around me, there's like quite a few pizza places. Actually, there's probably like 6 pizza places within a mile. So I was looking. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get pizza. It was Friday night. I stayed in. I was like, let's get something unhealthy. Let's get some carbs. Let's get some pizza. So I was looking at some different places, and I was like, let's try out a place I've never been to before. And that place was Papa Murphy's. And if you're familiar with that place, which I'm finding out that many people are, you're going to be like, Ben, once I tell you this, you're going to be like, Ben, you're such an idiot. But I'm from the East Coast. I've been in Colorado for 4 years, so I guess I probably should have heard of it at this point. But I don't, like I said, I don't usually get pizza. I don't eat out a ton. So I'd never heard of it before. So I go to it. I order online. I go there, and I did not realize that it's what they call a take and bake, which means it was not cooked. So I got there expecting to have a cooked pizza. I also got meatballs, and I also got cookies, which uncooked is just cookie dough. And that was, I feel kind of stupid. I didn't realize, I went there and they handed me the thing, and I was like, oh no, what have I done? And I probably should have known. Like on the website, the pizza, the verbiage was a little bit weird. They were like, whole milk mozzarella, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've never heard pizza described as that really. But what, I don't know. They showed pictures of cooked pizza. So I was like, that's got to be probably cooked pizza. You know, I didn't think, I've never heard of a pizza place other than just the freezer section at grocery stores where you go pick up an uncooked pizza. I've never heard of that concept. But also the one thing that I probably should have, it probably should have alerted some red flags when I was ordering, was the cookie dough. Online, it said, it showed a picture of chocolate chip cookies, and it said, cookie dough, $5.50. And I was like, but how many cookies? You know, it didn't say. I was like, I don't know, maybe, you know, it's just like that's their advertising angle. They're like, we got to differentiate. We say cookie dough, okay? We don't say chocolate chip cookies. We say cookie dough. And then we show a picture of chocolate chip cookies. So anyways, I got that. That was a major disappointment. Brought it home. I mean, you know, fortunately I have an oven, so I threw it in. I made it. Not good. Not good. People are telling me, you know, I have a friend, he's like, how did you not know it was like a take and bake? He's like, it's so cheap. How did that not trigger something in your brain? And I was like, dude, my go-to pizza is Little Caesars. Okay, that is the cheapest pizza on the planet, and they have the decency to throw that in the oven. Okay, so I had no idea. Also, it's not even that cheap. I don't even know what I paid, but I'm pretty sure they make the crust out of rice crackers. I mean, it was 1 millimeter thick. I probably paid $12, $15 for that pizza, and you're like, that's not cheap. Little Caesars, although they went up to like $8, used to be $5. That's what I'm into, you know? Hot and ready. That's my kind of Friday night. But that was interesting, you know? You live and you learn. I don't, you know. If you guys are aware of Papa Murphy's, leave a comment. Tell me I'm an idiot. If not, are there other take and bake places like that? Is this like a novel concept? I've never heard of this before. If I want a pizza that's not cooked but like put together, I'll just go to King Super. King Supers. Is it plural? Singular? I'm not even sure. But that was an interesting discovery this week. Like I said, I don't usually eat pizza. I try to not do that because with the Lyme disease and with it kind of being like chronic and just in my body for the rest of my life, it's not as bad as it used to be, but I do have to be careful. If I kind of cheat too much, then I can feel my body kind of going downhill more so than maybe others who don't have Lyme disease. But since I brought that up, I guess maybe this week I'll just go through that'll be kind of the story I tell, just Lyme disease, how I got that, what that experience was like. I don't know. Also leave a comment if you guys are familiar with Lyme disease. When I got it like 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, there was no information out there. I just went to a bunch of different doctors, and they were like, you're crazy. You're acting real silly right now, okay? Why don't you nip that in the bud and get out there and be normal? No, but to kind of start from the beginning with Lyme disease, first off, people would ask me, Lyme disease, if you're not familiar, comes from ticks, getting bitten by a tick. And people would always ask me, like, were you bitten by a tick? And it's like, well, yeah, growing up, I grew up in kind of rural Virginia. I was constantly in the woods, on farms, places with grass. I probably got bitten by hundreds, if not thousands, of ticks. when I was a child. So it could have been one of those, but there was specifically, I got bitten by a tick, which probably was the tick, the one that got me. A couple months before I realized all the symptoms had come on. And I remember I went to the doctor because I had a swollen lymph node, and I thought it was like a hernia. And the doctor was like, "Have you been bitten by a tick recently?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "That can do that." And that's where that conversation ended. There was no... Usually if you get Lyme disease, you have... They say like 60% of people get a bullseye target, like a red target on your body. That's kind of a main symptom. I don't know if I got that. I don't remember getting that. I don't know if I had it maybe on my body somewhere where I couldn't see. Either way, if we go back to the beginning, whether it was that tick or ticks from my childhood, whatever the case, it was summer after college, maybe a little after summer. It was probably September, October 2010. Still living in Forest, Virginia at my parents' after college. And looking back, after it happened, looking back, I realized I don't think I was feeling great, but there was like a moment where it all fell apart. And it was very much a difficult period for a couple years after that. But one night, I remember trying to go to bed. I had just come home from, so I lived about an hour and a half away from where I went to college. And I had a girlfriend at the time who was still at that college. She was a senior. I had graduated the year before. So I went and visited her. I drove back. I remember driving back just like looking at the sky, like feeling weird. Like weird. But, I didn't know if it was just kind of like post-drinking feeling, hangover, just it was being pretty unhealthy back then. And so I just thought, man, I feel off. And then I tried to go to bed that night, and that's kind of the first night, I guess, that I experienced a panic attack in my life. And I mean, it was such a weird feeling that, and so far out of left field, that I genuinely thought that I was either possessed by demons or had been like probed by aliens. Like I felt so crazy that I thought that was more likely than it's just like you're having a little stress going on in your chest. But I mean, it was so bad that I got up, and for the first time in probably, I was 22 at that point, for the first time in, I don't know, 12 years, I went up in the middle of the night and knocked on my parents' door and woke them up to be like, something's wrong. I don't feel good. And I mean, the next 2 years was, not to sound dramatic, but it was torture. Quite honestly, it was a very, very difficult period. It was almost kind of like an off and on, but mostly on panic attack, depression, like very, very difficult mental struggles. Physically, I struggled quite a bit too. I was so tired. I could not use the bathroom for weeks and months at a time. It was crazy. And I was going to a bunch of different doctors, especially in the beginning, because, it was the beginning. It was kind of just like, once it happened, that switch was flipped. I was like in straight panic for just constantly. So I was convinced that I was like dying. And so I was going to a bunch of different doctors, and they were all just like right away, just like, well, you're probably just stressed from post-college, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, dude, I don't think you get it. I've been through stress. I understand. This is a new thing. This is not, I'm a little sad, I'm a little depressed. This is, I feel crazy. Like, I legitimately remember thinking, I might need to be checked in somewhere because I feel insane, not stable at all. And I mean, fortunately, I had been healthy up to that point, and it was so out of the norm I'd been happy-go-lucky, and this was so instant and out of the norm. I was like, something is wrong. So I was going to a bunch of different doctors, and it was a very difficult period. I had a job at a YMCA at that point, and I like battled through a couple months of kind of like going in and really battling through just day to day, and I eventually had to quit after a couple months. I was so out of whack. I remember trying to joke about it one time. I went in to my boss's office, and I was trying to joke about how I wasn't feeling good, and I legit almost cried. I was like joking about the fact that I feel like I'm about to cry, and then I kind of like cried a little bit. And I was like, "Ooh, man, this ain't good." Trying to joke about it and then just being like choking up. But then for the next 2 years, I went to so many different doctors, got so many different tests. In the beginning, I did a Lyme disease test. It came back negative, but the whole thing, long story short with Lyme disease, is the test isn't a great indicator. I mean, it's just super complicated. So just doing like the yes or no test really isn't a good indicator. I eventually, a couple years later, got diagnosed with it, but had to go through like 2 years of just doctors being like, "You're messed up in the head. Here's a pill. Just stop complaining. Just go run." I remember going to a doctor being like, "I haven't gone to the bathroom in like a month." And he was like, "Just go for a run. Eat some salad." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I haven't gone to the bathroom for a month. Okay, I'm not talking about 2-3 days. Okay, there's an issue going on, and you tell me to go for a run is a little insulting." But I got a bunch of different tests. Was going to tons of different doctors. I got my bone marrow checked at one point to like cross out or rule out, I don't know, cancer or something along those lines. I got an endoscopy, a colonoscopy, which typically colonoscopies are later on in life, but they wanted to check out. Actually, it wasn't fun to do a colonoscopy, but it was interesting. After I got my colonoscopy, like I was waking up from anesthesia, and I experienced my first earthquake ever. It hit the same time, like waking up, and the building starts shaking. I mean, everybody's freaking out, the nurses, everybody, and I'm still kind of like high from the anesthesia, and I was like, "Ooh, this is neat. They didn't tell me about this part." But then, yeah, so I went through a bunch of that stuff. I mean, it was difficult. My social life, my college relationship at that time ended up not working out. For sure, primarily because I was not able to be a real person. My social life was gone. I mean, I was a hermit in my parents' basement, like just researching every day, like what is wrong with me. I thought it was my thyroid for a little while. I actually got diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks your thyroid until it dies. That's what they said. They go, "We don't know why it attacks, but once it starts attacking, it'll never stop until your thyroid dies." And I'm like, I was like, "Can I talk to another doctor? I don't like the way you said that to me." He's like, "Your body's broken and we don't know why, but it's broken and you can't fix it." I didn't like that as just a matter of fact thing. But I took medication for a little while for the thyroid stuff. It didn't help at all. It actually gave me, crazy enough, it gave me like the worst back knee. I mean, horrible back knee. And I've never had like, I've had pimples and stuff, but I've never had like really, really bad skin on my back, fortunately. But it was bad. Like after I got off the medication, my back was scarred for like a year or more. And it was immediately once I started taking it, and it stopped as soon as I stopped taking it. I probably took it for like 3 months or so, the thyroid medication. And I went to the doctor, and I remember being like, "My back is messed up because of this medication." He goes, "The medication doesn't do that." And long story short, doctors, I really hate to say it, but doctors I do not respect very much. If you got like an obvious broken bone thing, they're certainly there to help with plenty of things. I'm not saying they're useless, but when it comes to if you're having some issues that maybe are a little bit harder to diagnose and figure out, you really have to be your biggest advocate, which stinks because, you want to just go in and have somebody be like, this is what's wrong. This is what's going to fix you. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So I had to go. That's all I did was trying to figure out what's going on with me. So yeah, I took the thyroid medication for a little while, and I think it was 2012, February 2012, I went and finally got diagnosed. I went to a Lyme disease, like, specialized doctor and finally got diagnosed. So for a year and a half, I didn't know what it was. I was just told that I was crazy. I was eating so strict. I was so paranoid. I felt so bad that I was eating straight like chicken and broccoli. I cut out alcohol for a couple year period because people were like, how did you cut that stuff out? I felt so crazy and insane. I was like, what is a cake or alcohol going to do for me? I feel crazy. I'm not trying to put anything into my body that might make me feel I'm so unstable right now. So eventually, February 2012, I got a Lyme disease specialized doctor, which was like 4 hours away from my hometown. And I remember the night before it snowed, and my parents, and to back up just a second, it took like maybe 3+ months to get into this doctor. Like, they were booked up for such a long time. So it snowed the night before my appointment, and my parents were like, we might not be able to go up. And I was like, we are driving up. I don't care how much snow, I don't care what's going on. We are going. Unfortunately, we go there. They ran a bunch of different tests and this and that, and I can't remember all the specific tests and things they did, but they clinically diagnosed me there with Lyme disease, and they gave me a ton of like different antibiotics and basically different variations of antibiotics is, I guess, the simple answer. And so for the next probably for the next 6 months, I was on and off antibiotics, which is horrible. Like, I would be on the antibiotics for like a month, and then they would test my white blood cell count, and they'd be like, your white blood cell count is too low to like defend off potential viruses or things that you could get, which is dangerous. So you got to get off the antibiotics. So I'd be on antibiotics for a month. My white blood cell count would get too low. I'd go off for like a month. It would come back up a little bit. I'd get back on. And I did this cycle for like 6 months. And it was horrible, dude. Man, I remember I started working. So I didn't work for like maybe a year and a half because I was just really struggling with everything going on with the Lyme. And then I started working eventually at Dick's Sporting Goods and just retail sports store. I was the running expert, I think. They paid me $8 an hour instead of $7.25 to be the expert, whatever that means. And I remember going in there just being on 3 like different antibiotics, and just, you got to stand there. You're in retail, you got to stand there and like smile at people, but I just felt dead inside. The antibiotic, I just felt dead. So people would come up, and I'd just be like this dead person being like, how can I help you with your running needs? Which was a bit of a bummer. But I did that for a while. Actually, I won't tell the story now. Well, I don't know. Maybe I ended up getting fired from Dick's Sporting Goods. Essentially the only job I got fired from. And long story short, I was always there on time. I was a good employee. I do everything they ask, but they had like employee discounts from specific manufacturers. So like, whatever, Nike, Adidas, Merrell, whoever, occasionally would send in special discounts that were just for the employees. And they would like print those out and they'd put them in the employee break room. And so one time I there was like 50% off for this company called Earbuds. It was like a headphone thing that you kind of like twisted in place, and it was supposed to be good for running and staying in your ears while you're running. So I bought a pair of those. They were $30, 50% off. I got them for $15. I went home, and I think my dad was like, "Oh, those would be convenient." He runs as well. He was like, "Could you get me a pair?" So I was like, "Yeah." So I go back the next day. I get another one of those 50% papers from the back break room. I grab a set of headphones, go up, pay for it, all good. And then a month later, I got called into the office at the end of my shift, and it was the loss prevention district manager was on the line. So my manager was there in the room with me, and then on the phone line, we were talking to the loss prevention manager. And it was so funny because I went in there thinking that I was like going to get kudos, because like a day or a couple days before, people would always come in and steal stuff, and you're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to be like, "Hey, I saw you steal that." Like, I saw you just did it right in front of me. Couldn't do that. The only thing you could do is kill them with customer service. That's the whole thing. So the only thing you could do, you could see somebody steal, you couldn't mention it, you couldn't touch them. Obviously, you couldn't do anything. All you could do is go up there and be like, "How can I help you? Do you need help with anything?" And hopefully just scare them, I guess, into, they're like, "Oh, this 22-year-old who makes $8 an hour is really, really scaring me," I guess. So anyways, I actually did that. Me and two other employees kind of like we saw this guy steal, and then we just kind of like all converged on him to be like, "How can we help you?" And he dropped the shoes and he ran out. And I thought I was going in and going to get kudos for being like, "Hey, you did a good job." And that was not the case. The guy talked all nice to me for like 10 minutes and stuff, and then just out of the blue, he goes, "Ben, have you ever stolen anything from the company?" And I go, "No." And then he goes, "I'm going to give you one more chance to answer this question correctly." And I was like, "I don't know what's going on." And he goes, "Those earbuds ring a bell?" And I was like, "Yeah, I bought some like a month ago." And he goes, "You bought two. You bought two, and you were only allowed to buy one." Apparently in the fine print of like the printed out sheet, in the back it said limit of one. Which, by the way, these weren't things that like would come in and the managers would be like, "Hey, here's a discount. Make sure you only get one." There was none of that. It was literally just like the manager would print out like 50 copies and throw it on the back break room table. On the paper, it's like this big 50% off earbuds, and you're like, "All right, okay." Like, I just didn't read the little fine print at the bottom. So long story short, they fired me. So, I was pretty devastated. I was like, $8 an hour. I was going to raise a family with this. But anyways, that was kind of during the period of the Lyme. And ultimately, to get back to what I was talking about with having the antibiotics and feeling dead, I did that on and off for like 6 months. I kind of got to the point where I realized this is not a long-term solution. I was really it was a very difficult spot to be in, because I was like, I can't do antibiotics long-term. They're not seeming to work. And also, this is like killing my body. I have to find another way. But there wasn't, I remember almost pulling the trigger on paying $2,000 for like an ozone sauna as like a very controversial treatment, like have ozone, like that extra oxygen molecule, go into your body and basically like a free radical kill cells. If you're a scientist, you're probably like, that's not how it works at all. I'm not 100% sure. But what I ended up doing was I just stuck with a very strict diet that did not have sugar, did not have gluten, didn't have a bunch of these. I just cut out everything. And slowly over time, I mean, it took years, but slowly over time, that started to kind of heal the insides of my body, and eventually got to the point where my immune system got in a better place, and I was able to kind of get out and about and be a real person again. It was really tough, I mean, from 22 until 24, 25, I was pretty much, those are kind of erased years in my life where I didn't do I was just kind of battling through it, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, trying to get healthy again, being in a very, very bad mental place, which looking back is almost hard to remember. I mean, it was such a difference from what I'm used to, and just being like an outgoing, happy-go-lucky person, that it's hard to even like imagine being in that thing where it's like I was like crying all the time. I mean, it was bad. But yeah, that was that period of my life. But I will say this: it kind of wiped out some of my my years in my early 20s, which was obviously in the moment, and still, it's an unfortunate thing. But the silver lining of it was going through such a difficult thing early in adulthood, and having to just deal with so many mental and physical obstacles, and learning like coping mechanisms and things that I could do, and to try to get out of it. And then ultimately just learning that a healthy lifestyle, like food, affects my mood, and understanding what I'm putting in my body. And if I'm not feeling well, that I need to get back in like a healthy eating and physical activity routine to try to get back to feeling normal again. And I think, like I said, the silver lining is getting all those tools, being forced to kind of understand what to do, and having all those tools now that I'm in my 30s. It's very much something that I'll go through stuff now, and it's much easier to handle and understand what I need to do to kind of come out of it, because I dealt with it so early. So I guess that is kind of a silver lining, something that was not nice, but something that I can look back and be like, well, really went through a lot pretty early on, so I feel ready for Bring It On. Lyme Disease 2.0. Bite me, ticks. What are you going to do? No, please don't bite me. I don't want to go through that again. It was rough. It was a tough period. But yeah, to circle around, that's why I don't eat pizza that much, but ate pizza twice this week. It was a big week for me. But yeah, that's the story time for this week. And I guess I'll talk about what I'm working on comedy-wise. And this last week, the last couple weeks, finding a new job, starting a new job, I haven't been writing as much as I would have liked. But one thing that I really want to do, I've got a run of shows that I'm doing in my home state of Virginia in April. So I'll be doing some longer sets. And one thing I really want to work on leading up to that time is going through a bunch of kind of like the DCB jokes that are typically filling out longer sets, and trying to just improve those as much as I can to get them, a C joke to a B, a C joke to a B joke, a B joke to an A joke, a D joke. I don't even know if that's something people talk about. I think a D joke is just words that aren't funny, I think. Like, most of my jokes are D jokes. Someone's like, yeah, sounds like you have no jokes. Maybe. Just improving the ones that I already have, and trying to get those as good and as tight as possible leading up to Virginia. And yeah, that should be fun. This morning I sent out like 100 emails. I'm really about 6-7 weeks out of that run in Virginia, and trying to fill in a couple dates, and it's kind of like the urgent time now, really trying to lock stuff in, and have had a little bit more trouble than past runs that I've done and getting stuff locked in. So trying to get that all sorted out. It's been a little bit stressful, but just got to do what you got to do. Email a million people and hopefully like 3 get back to you. So that's what I'm working on. I got to write some new stuff and try to sort out some things. I'm hoping, I don't know, maybe this podcast just talking out like just the last 20 minutes, if you listen to that, if you made it through with me with the Lyme disease story. I have a joke about Lyme disease. It's like 3 minutes, and I mean it hits a couple of those parts, but for the most part it's kind of just a few things here and there. It's not like a full story. There's a lot of stuff there that I think I could joke about, but it's tough to do the stories. But maybe talking it out in this format will give me more ideas or ability to kind of mine some of these stories and find the funny. I'm gonna try to write a joke about Papa Murphy's. I'll tell you that much. A place that doesn't cook their pizza. Who do they think they are? Cookie dough. Like here's a tub of cookie dough. Papa Murphy's. Anyways, that's what I'm working on as far as comedy goes. What do I got coming up? This next week I've got a show at a brewery. I'm not sure what date. March 1st. It's a clean show. I think I'm doing 10 minutes. That should be exciting. And then I'm doing a Don't Tell. It'll be my first Don't Tell. Maybe, I think next Saturday, maybe, March 4th. If you're not familiar with Don't Tell, it's like a very big up-and-coming, or not even up-and-coming, it's come. It's here. It's a kind of independent comedy show. I don't know how to explain it. Look it up. Don't Tell Comedy. They got a ton of clips on social media. I've heard that most of the crowds are just incredibly good. So looking forward to that. I think I'm doing 10 minutes there as well. As far as the reading, this last week I haven't been able to read with the new job and just kind of chaos going on as far as, like I said, trying to set up that run in Virginia. It's been very busy, but the newest book I'm on, can't remember if I talked about it in the last episode, but The Three Mind Body. I've read a decent amount. I'm still not quite sure. I think it's like a fiction type thing, but the first 100 pages has been talking about like the revolution in China and some technology, and people are dying, and is that a good synopsis? You guys want to read it? It's supposed to be good, and I think it will be interesting. It's just one of those where with fictions, you got to kind of like read a bunch for things to come together, whereas other books you're kind of just following along a simple story, and you kind of know where you stand as you're reading it. This is something that it'll come together. But I got to start reading again shortly. Get through that book. It's easy for me. If I get real busy, I'll be knocking out books. Not knocking them out, but going through books maybe in a couple weeks, finishing them. And then it can be easy to kind of get off track and be like, ooh, I haven't read a page in a couple weeks. So I'll have to get back in the routine of that. Hopefully next podcast I'll have a vocabulary word that I've learned from the book, and I can share that and then forget it immediately. Suffused. I still remember that. Do you guys? But yeah, I'll end it there. That's the podcast for this week. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. A little bit about shows, a little bit about my Lyme disease journey. And yeah, we'll end it there, and we'll catch you guys again next week.